You vote for it and the video shall be here. Welcome to our video on loneliness. I promise this will not be too sad. People are utterly exhausted by work and we all have to do it. Like, the commute genuinely has a negative impact on people's mental health. Work outputs have increased, productivity has gone up, but wages have stagnated, if not reversed actually, in terms of real terms. Commute times have also continued to rise. People take their work home with them to be able to actually get more done in the day and, you know, decide to combine their work phone with their personal phone, meaning that they're constantly reachable. Unhealthy, please don't do this if you're at that kind of level. And on top of all of that, people are having to work side hustles just to be able to make ends meet. It's hard enough for people to find the time to cook, to clean, to exercise, to all that sort of stuff that you absolutely have to do, let alone have the energy for the emotional labor that a friendship or relationship requires. Because I want you to remember this, friendships and relationships in general, they do require emotional labor. Friendships and relationships in general require interest, communication, compassion, empathy, and effort. Like, if me saying any of that actually made you feel quite exhausted, I personally feel like we've been brought to this point of exhaustion because we've got technology which just makes it so much easier for us to just not and just opt out, whether that's by ghosting someone, not replying, just not anything. It just makes it so much easier because the amount of free time that we have is so small that it means that people just want to be able to have something to control of their own. So personally, that's what I think, but we'll be exploring that more in this video. Now, this is not me saying anytime that you're not working, you must be absolutely free to go spend time with people and do all of the other things, because no, you need to be able to charge your own batteries first, and I actually made a whole video on all of this over here. But what happens if the ways to build our energy reserves actually drain us to begin with, meaning that we've got less tolerance for people? And then, how do you feel when I say that social isolation and loneliness have been estimated to shorten a person's life by 15 years? And what if I said, according to a US study done in 2018, that Gen Z and millennials are lonelier and claim to be in worse health than older generations? Don't click off yet, I promise. What we're doing in this video is we're trying to, as per usual, have a holistic understanding view of things. Because unless we actually understand the full context of something and try to understand ourselves a bit better, we can't really find a way forward. Because you know me, I like to try and find rays of hope, so we're going to be getting to that point, but we have to have this lens of understanding before we can get there. You know? Okay, cool. My goal for this video is to be able to find ways to make us feel less lonely. What is loneliness? Being alone and feeling lonely are two very separate things. Being alone, you could be quite content in that, but you can feel lonely even in a crowded room, as delightful Marilyn Monroe did say.
It's a terrible thing to be lonesome, especially in the middle of a crowd. You know what I mean?
To quote the experts here, loneliness is a subjective, unwelcome feeling of lack or loss of companionship, which happens when there's a mismatch between the quantity and quality of the social relationships that we have and those that we want. This definition refers to the cognitive discrepancy theory, where loneliness is regarded as a discrepancy between the desired and achieved levels and the quality and quantity of social relations. So basically, you've got three types of loneliness. Emotional loneliness is the absence of a significant other with whom a close attachment or meaningful relationship existed, such as a partner or close friend, which capitalism is actually interpreted to mean like dating apps and dating shows which are gamified in a way to make people feel even more alone. Social loneliness is the lack of a wider social network of friends, neighbours or colleagues. In my opinion, this is something which has actually become baked into Western culture because of capitalism's grip on us and taking more and more time from us, because we all have to work to be able to survive, and work has just kind of grown to the point where we don't really have time for anything, as I spoke about at the start of this video. Existential loneliness is described as a universal aspect of the human condition which expresses the separateness of the person from others. This is the one which I feel like can get weaponized by business and tech, but we will get to that point. So as you can see, there are very different things when it comes to the types of loneliness that people can feel. Like, for example, I am alone most of the time at random works, long hours, sometimes weekends, but I don't actually feel lonely because most of my life is actually online, because I've spoken about this with the fact that we're still in this panoramic, meaning that I have to be incredibly careful. The only times that I actually feel lonely is when I have to deal with people around the panoramic because people don't want to mask, or they think that testing is an inconvenience, or even rude to ask people. That's the only time that I personally feel alone, like an outcast, like nobody actually cares. Like, because it's kind of a very uncaring thing to do. So that's where I personally feel like, oh, you know, like this sense of separation, like you're not worthy because people don't want to take precautions in order to be able to protect your life. When I was reading up on this, a lot of articles actually harken back to the time of the panoramic. However, we're still in it, people are still dying from it, people are still getting long-term debilitating conditions from it. So we've got a bit of an ableist skew when it comes to reporting, but as with a lot of things in life, when do we not? Long Rona sufferers report their feelings of being left behind, ousted and forgotten about. By trying to go back to normal, we've actually created an environment that is actively harmful towards people. Also, from last week's child-free video, it was actually requested that I talk about the difficulty of adult female friendships, and I think that requires an entirely separate video, so subscribe because I'll be doing that one in a few weeks. How loneliness impacts people. It's a class issue. So the Kaiser Foundation did a survey across America, the UK and Japan in 2018, you know, in the before times. They did this to seek out the loneliness issue because it was a problem before we had Rona. People experiencing loneliness disproportionately reported lower incomes and having a debilitating health condition or mental health conditions. About 6 in 10 say there's a specific cause for their loneliness, and compared to those who are not lonely, they more often report being dissatisfied with their personal financial situation. Honestly, I find this completely understandable in societies that function under capitalism. Your only worth is your ability to be productive, and people that can't be productive in the right way, they get shunned, especially if you have to be on the benefit or you've got some sort of disability or illness, or you're just unable to work. And it means that you get neglected and vilified. The USA sees loneliness as more of an individual problem, whereas the UK and Japan see it more of like a public health issue that the government needs to actually step in on, which also checks out when we actually think about individualism in the US. It's kind of one of those things that is like this, they're like best friends, inseparable. And actually the UK and Japan both have loneliness ministers now to actually try and solve this problem. Not that I think that there's enough funding, but we'll get to that. People often bring up social media as being a cause for loneliness, but people in this study actually said that they're not more likely than their peers to report social media use if they actually suffer from loneliness. So no matter what all those documentaries and everything have been trying to say, no, social media isn't actually like the villain. It comes down to the algorithms and the programmers, as we will be talking about. Because I know that when Twitter got taken over by Elon, for example, people in the disabled community were incredibly worried because that is a primary source of being able to actually communicate amongst your community, was using this kind of town hall Twitter. So the way that Elon has been mixing things up has actually really deeply impacted people's lives and communities, because that was their form of communication, to have community, to not feel lonely. So yeah, just another thing we don't like about Elon. So the whole technology equals bad is just a bad take. Business and technology, however, that's where it gets spicy. You know, the whole thing with existential loneliness and people feeling like the world doesn't understand them? Algorithms can hook onto that, and they've kind of been designed to do that, and it can lead people down this terrifying rabbit hole where you suddenly find yourself going from Joe Rogan to Jordan Peterson, all the way to Ben Shapiro, all the way to way worse people, if you can even get worse than that in life. Is it possible? I don't know. Social media is designed to enrage and divide. How often do you look at your phone, whether you are on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, whatever, and you find yourself getting like really frustrated and angry? Because same. There's actually a really interesting study done by Luke Munn, which is called Angry by Design, Toxic Communication and Technical Architectures. It's a long and thorough study which I will link down below along with all of my other sources, same as I always do. To quote, "Based on engagement, Facebook feed drives views but also privileges incendiary content, setting up a stimulus-response loop that promotes outrage expression. YouTube's recommendation system is a key interface for content consumption, yet this same design has been criticized for leading users towards more extreme content." So what Facebook does is they boost posts that have the angry reaction because they know it will drive a base reaction from people. Designers have admitted that their systems are addictive and exploit negative triggers. They've explained that Facebook's design privileges base impulses rather than considered reflection. Neuroscientist Molly Crockett actually stresses that when outrage expression expression moves online, it becomes more readily available, requiring less effort, and is reinforced on a schedule that maximizes the likelihood of future outrage expression in ways which might divorce the feeling of outrage from its behavioral expression. Basically, they've made a tool to make people hot-headed and extremely reactive. Very healthy, obviously. A few suggestions have been made to help stop people from having such knee-jerk reactions to things, such as time. Time actually makes a big difference, so giving people a bit of a pause. But I don't know about you, but if I have like a website that has been like very slow to load, I get more frustrated with it rather than less. So I don't know if that one would work. Another thing that was suggested, to have a little suggestion box when people are arguing or something, to take the discussion into a one-on-one setting. And honestly, I think that this is one of the best approaches. Arguments by public forum, or public shaming as they're often used, is just a way to rile everyone up. Honestly, I don't think it's helpful at all. YouTube plays a big part in the alt-right pipeline, but it's actually faster on TikTok. On YouTube, users are incrementally nudged down a medial pathway towards more far-right content, from anti-SJW videos to gaming-related misogyny, conspiracy theories to white supremacism, racial realism, and thinly veiled anti-Semitism. In a recent paper analysing over 300,000 videos across 349 channels, a study found that users consistently migrate from milder to more extreme content, shifting from so-called alt-light material to more strident alt-right channels. This is what I mean when I talk about the alt-right pipeline, and I am not the first to talk about the manosphere at all. There are incredible videos I will have on the screen right now, and also linked down below for you to go and watch instead about the manosphere and unpacking all of that stuff. So if you really want to get scared of TikTok, check out this Institute for Strategic Dialogue report, where 30% of their samples supported white supremacy, 24% supported extremists or terrorists, and there's 2 million views on a video spreading anti-Asian hate about the panoramic. Content removal and banning is near impossible because re-uploads happen all the time. Like, even though Andrew Tate wasn't uploading his stuff, his followers absolutely were. And you can just create an entirely new account and just have like a slight variation on your name and you're back up to uploading everything again. The apps are designed this way is what I'm saying, and it's not saying that everyone on these platforms is like that, because that is absolutely not the case. It's just the fact that the algorithms favor the more extreme content because it elicits an extreme reaction. People are more likely to stitch it, to interact with it, to do all that stuff, which boosts engagement further. And like I said, lonely, sad men are actually the most likely targets.
It's a grand romantic gesture.
Yeah, that is amazing, mate. 5,000 miles to surprise a girl who you've only met once, especially if she's the one who ghosted you.
No, she didn't ghost me. She just doesn't have an international calling plan.
Oh, right.
Let's talk about the world of love, dating apps. So from my single friends, the frustration at the terribleness of the dating pool is kind of endless, it seems. It's so hard to meet people, especially as you get older, and we've all been taught repeatedly that everyone must be in a heteronormative relationship, even if it means you hate each other down the lines and constantly make boomer remarks. That's what we do. That's how it's always been done. If you want to be single, I'm happy for you. If you want a relationship, I hope that you're happy in that relationship. Like, seriously, like, oh, I hate this sort of pressure. So if you're single and you want love, it is incredibly hard to actually meet people because you don't have the time to be able to go out to all these different places all the time because you're working all the time, like we said at the start of the video. So you have a choice as a single person, what path you're going to take, whether it's going to be dating apps, or if you're going to resort to your family that keeps on pressuring you to meet up with these weird people that they keep wanting you to meet. Which one are you going to choose? Because I don't know, do you trust their taste? But dating apps also aren't really designed as a winning situation, because if you win on there, then you don't spend time on there and you don't spend money on there. And what business is going to launch with a goal of having a low retention rate? And I am not saying that the apps are useless, because I'm actually going to be bridesmaid at one of my besties' weddings, like literally coming up soon. They met on Tinder 7 years ago, so it can indeed happen. If you've met your partner on Tinder, I am so happy for you. But like what we see on shows like Married at First Sight, which I will be doing a video on, people aren't really willing to stray from their list and to have sort of like gaps in knowledge, gaps in expectation, gaps in similarities and stuff, because we've been sort of trained that you need to have like this checklist of things, because that's kind of what dating apps are based on, right? You have checklist and then you talk. It's really easy to cut things off as soon as you find your initial ick.
If I get the ick, I can start to find everything unbelievably annoying.
Alna Lu actually says successful relationships are not often built on similarities, but rather on the capacity to tolerate and reconcile differences. Dating apps are love gamified, literally designed after slot machines. They create this sense of dopamine when you get a match, and you get this feeling of validation, and then there is like pretty soon down the line there is a quick ick, and then you're just straight away onto the next person, dopamine hit again, and then you're just on this constant spiral of always trying to find like the next best thing, because you just want to find the one, but they don't really want to match you with the one, because then you want to get frustrated and keep on getting like these close matches. All of this is assuming that people are on there to genuinely try to find a relationship and try to match with people who hold similar values and beliefs, and not just based on a picture or an opportunity to be an online troll. Because hey, I see those, I watch those, it's horrific. In Alna's piece on Psychology Today, they say, on a macro level, we voice concerns on the world becoming increasingly divided, but on a micro level, we're sheltered from confronting differences by dating algorithms with each layer of filter applied. We limit ourselves from being challenged and close ourselves up to differences. This doesn't just apply to dating apps, but algorithms in general. Like, I've spoken about the filter bubble before, like this is well documented. Plus, there's also an issue with people having an antagonistic and bad faith approach to things. You know, like, since the apps that we use to get our news from and everything, it keeps on serving us stuff that we personally agree with, or that outrage us to the point that we have like this big knee-jerk reaction, it's very easy to kind of like paint everyone as like being an enemy or a bad person because of like one flaw or something. It means that people create these fixed mindsets and pigeonhole people very quickly. It happens to me a lot. But in order to be able to have relationships, whether it's romantic, friendship, whatever, you need to be able to actually have an open mindset to things, so then you can not just see people through a bad faith lens, because that is literally just going to paint the entire picture in a negative way. And we also need to have our own humility and be able to recognize that, hey, we can learn things, that we can change, and we can grow. The thing is that change can be done by people. We have to believe that if they were able to learn to go down this alt-right pipeline, they can unlearn that as well. Like, I am such a different person. Like, Brenda and I are both such different people from what we were 10 years ago when we like met. Like, we're so very different, and we've had to go through all of that uncomfortable unlearning stuff and everything together as well, including when we went vegan. Like, that was incredibly confronting. Like, that was horrifying to actually go through that, but I'm so glad that we did. And it's just one of those things where unless you're actually willing to admit that, hey, you may be wrong about something, then you're just gonna like bar yourself off. And this is on all sides, okay? I'm not attacking you at all. I hope that you're not thinking I am, because you know me, I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad here, okay? Just recognizing the fact that nobody's born perfect and that everyone's got the capacity to actually change, learn, and grow will actually lead to a way more positive result than just being like, ugh. You know what I mean?
It's no coincidence that the targets are shaped like single people and not couples.
Men and loneliness. Whilst women are more likely to actually report feeling lonely, men feel lonely as well. It's just about admitting it, that they don't really do all that much. And haven't really been taught ways to actually reach out to other people unless it's through some sort of sporting activity or something. Boys have been taught for generations to toughen up and not show signs of femininity, as I talked about in my femphobia video, but they're not really taught to actually speak about their feelings or even recognize their feelings, because it's seen as a weakness and a girly thing to do. One study conducted by Shelley Boris at the University of Waterloo found that women may not necessarily feel lonelier, they may just be more comfortable admitting that they're lonely. Women are more apt to acknowledge their loneliness than men because the negative consequences of admitting loneliness are less for women. In the same way that there's still a mental health stigma for men, I mean, honestly, how hard is it to get a guy to actually just book a doctor's appointment for an annual checkup or even a dentist appointment? Being a provider is how men prove their worth. It's how they ensure their masculinity. But with wages stagnating for what, like 20 years plus, they struggle to do that, and it leads to a sense of failure and then subsequent loneliness from that. And honestly, it's no wonder to me that the alt-right pipeline exists in the way it does these days, because it's so easy to just go from like wanting to look at finance videos on how to manage your finances better, because that is your job as a man to be able to do that, and then you go on to how to get rich quick, how to invest properly, and then that suddenly starts leading down to other pathways, such as like how men are so hard done by these days. And you can see the very easy steps into alt-right that you can take just by actually starting out with this whole like, I really want to be able to be a provider, all the way to men are screwed these days. You know what I mean? It's so easy, and algorithms are designed exactly that way, which then perpetuates this sense of loneliness. When it comes to relationships, women want more one-on-one, in-depth relationships, whereas men are okay with just having acquaintances, you know, a bit more surface level. But so long as they're there, then that's cool, which kind of explains this whole manosphere thing, because they're alone but together alone, you know, and they can hype each other up. So it honestly, it makes so much sense once you actually look at it and analyze it a little bit. But also the thing is that single men are actually the most lonely. Remember how I pointed out that women were brought back from work to be able to actually be there to support the men, to be that emotional support? That's not very much the case today. Like, I think that any girlfriend, wife, partner, whatever, will definitely be able to relate to that. But you can't just have one relationship to have everything pinned on. So that is where like we've got this big problem, especially for single men, because they don't have this sort of emotional support, because that's the role that we've been trained into as women. Again, I talked about this before. So it really doesn't surprise me why they kind of get like this really aggressive, like, everyone's failed me, the world is against me sort of mentality, you know, to be able to have power over women by putting them down and saying like, you're not a high worth woman and whatever rubbish. All of this feeds in together, and the way that social media can profit off the sad and lonely ends up almost weaponizing them against actual real people. It's no wonder people feel more lonely when this has been happening. It really does worry me, particularly when it comes to teens and kids and like young men, because we know that our brains only fully develop at the age of 25. To have all of this stuff sort of be constantly churned through that sort of age group is very worrying to me. And it really doesn't surprise me why we've got these horrible things that we're seeing all the time from like young men creating this content. If you want some positive men to follow, or people in your life that you want to be able to like steer onto like different content creators, these are all amazing creators. I'll have them linked down below. I know that most of my audience is women, that's why I'm just highlighting this, because I know maybe you aren't watching them yourself. So yeah, I will just have that link down below for you. I'm gonna give you some hope now with some ways forward, because oh my gosh, isn't this a lot? There are incredible grassroots movements which have happened in various places across America, which honestly warmed my heart to read. I'll link the article down below. Like, this whole thing from Stanford was amazing. Mon Ami was created in 2018 to help foster connections between older and younger generations, where it functioned a bit like the gig economy, where the older person's family would spend like $25 for a student to spend time playing Scrabble and like with the older person. By 2020, more than 10,000 hours of companionships had happened. Then, during the pandemic, they actually licensed their technology to help older and vulnerable populations, which coordinated unpaid volunteers to deliver groceries, pick up prescriptions, run errands, and check in on isolated individuals. And then there's Sage, which created Sage Connect, which invites younger and older adults in the LGBT community and their allies to talk as peers via weekly phone call or video call. Since May of 2020, the initiative has connected nearly 400 seniors with younger volunteers, who've made thousands of hours of calls. In Frome, which is a small town in the UK, part of the Somerset County, the Compassionate Frome project was launched in 2013 by Helen Kingston, who's a GP. She kept encountering patients who seemed defeated by the medicalisation of their lives, so they employed health connectors to help people plan their care, and most interestingly, trained voluntary community connectors to help their patients find the support that they needed. This actually had a huge impact, and emergency admissions across Somerset, which is the county in general that Frome is part of, that increased by 30%. Meanwhile, Meanwhile, foam itself, that decreased by 15% during the period of the experiment actually happening. So from the success there, why has that not been rolled out more widely across the whole country? Could it be because of repeated budget cuts and the fact that healthcare workers, teachers and anyone who is part of the essential services are kind of like forgotten about on repeat and treated like they're terrible people for just needing to have like a living wage and safe working conditions? Yeah, that could possibly be part of it. So let's go to my final thoughts. We can actually do something about loneliness. Altruism is one of the best ways to actually foster connection, and it also helps to give you purpose as well. Now, I know this sounds really corny, but genuinely there will probably be things going on in your local community, in your local area. It just depends on what you want to do that you're passionate about or that you feel safe doing. Something like that. Whether it is starting out with a beach cleanup even, or helping to restore green spaces. But any sort of thing that you kind of want to do, there's probably something already out there that could possibly actually use your help. And it's also a really great way to meet people. You can make new friends that way. You can actually possibly even, I don't know, meet someone that isn't just constantly holding up a dead fish on a dating app. I don't know, you could actually meet some amazing people. You could actually be part of like the grassroots movements that actually help us change the way that things are right now. It actually really helps to foster that sort of connection because we're really living in a very individualistic sort of society as opposed to a collectivist one. Like everything's more about the self than it is about doing things to look after others, you know, kind of like that sort of self-sacrifice and stuff to look after people. I'm not telling you to go give away all your stuff or anything like that. I'm just saying like there are definitely things that we can do to actually foster better connection. Again, it comes down to your safety, and wouldn't it be amazing if we had great public transport to actually get us from place to place to be able to do this stuff? And what about even a 4-day work week so that we actually had the time to do this stuff? Oh my gosh, wouldn't that be so good? We can push for that, I'm sure. But anyway, like I really just hope that with this video I was able to actually make you feel less alone in the way that you're feeling about the situation. A lot of people are suffering from different sorts of loneliness, and sometimes it's actually just good to be able to actually hear that other people are as well and that you're not alone in this stuff. And it's kind of why I really like having these sort of conversations with you, because it helps me feel less alone, and I definitely know that because I really do appreciate everyone that comments on my videos. It really actually does make a huge difference. So yeah, I just want you to be able to have a bit of a better day, and maybe this is giving you some ideas. Maybe this has helped you understand things a little bit better. There's no video next week because it's our 10-year anniversary, so we're gonna go away somewhere which is mostly just about being outdoors because it's one of the only things that we can do. So that's what we're gonna go do. I'm gonna have a week off. But after that, female friendship video, and obviously there's going to be the finale of Buffy, and then a gossip video about everything that went on after Buffy and during Buffy, because lots of tea there. And also, do you want me to start up the Icons series again? Because I'm thinking of a video on Lindsay Lohan, but you tell me that this is kind of why I have like these sort of chats with you, so then you can tell me, and it kind of rewards the people that are here at the end of the video. I hope you have a lovely rest of your week. Do something nice for yourself. Maybe get in touch with someone that you haven't spoken to for a little while, because connections are kind of what we need to be able to get through what's going to be happening with the climate crisis. I think that by us fostering connection now, it will probably have us better off, honestly. We need to definitely focus on community to be able to get through the climate crisis, okay? Genuinely. Have a lovely rest of your week. I'll see you again very soon. Bye!